Since the P4 released years ago, maxed some jobs and all the tanks, I feel confident in saying that a lot of jobs feel too similar. They have characters, let's see. The tanks all have the same build, gauge, expand. This is true. Aside from Paladin, this is pretty much true now. One combo for damage, buff dot, raw damage deal, that's true. Casters feel the most unique from each other if you ask me. I guess they get a pass, but healers are bleh. The whole 2 heals, 2 shielders thing made them lose a lot of uniqueness, and the rotations aren't nearly as fleshed out. Honestly, I feel as though this would be a better discussion topic, is talking about healer rotations. Like, as far as healer rotations are concerned, I'm a bad healer. I don't heal. So I love the fact that I don't have to think about separate rotation buttons to get my off GCDs off and to get my heals off. It's just, I don't know, it's easier for someone who's not used to healing to heal. Because I don't feel like I'm gimping my my party on damage if I don't know my, my exact rotation for optimal damage, aside from, I guess, Astro. Astros always have something fun to do because they have to give out cards, and they have some of the most combo-y off GCDs. It's pretty fun, I just don't play it. When I want something annoying like Cleric Stance, unique buffs for each job. Long-lasting unique buffs. This reminds me a bit of WoW play, where you just buff up, you give it to them, and they last for like pre-pulls. That's not terrible, but I feel as though it gets redundant. That every pull beforehand, everyone stop for 20 seconds while the white mage casts this buff on every person. It doesn't seem as fun for the way that FF14 raids, specifically raids, are designed. I also don't really like the lack of unique buffs and debuffs. They mostly boil down to allies hit harder for a little while, reduce enemy defense for a little while. Rarely anything fancy like reflect magical or physical damage, or haste for increased weapon skill speed, or even generic things enemies use like paralyze or blind. I think one job can inflict it. Yeah, hardly any reason to use those kinds of debuffs. I think they made jobs easier for people to pick up and for people to switch between. And for FF14 has a very appealing mechanic where you can play all jobs on one character. And I think that's really fun. I think that's great. The flexibility is good. And that's probably one of the biggest kind of draws to it. And there's also the choice to just not do that. But it becomes harder to take advantage of that choice if each job you want to be proficient on requires so much more variance in mechanics and skills. Like, I play different jobs, and even now I'm just thinking, wow, if I were to go straight from melee to try to, let's say, practice Black Mage, I am going to be clueless. And that's with current job design. But that's also, like, I guess that falls under casters feel the most unique. But they also feel probably the most unique from any other role. That's something that at least they've done right. Melees, if you get to the nitty gritty of it, each one does something different and each one plays differently enough. I know, I guess for general play there's going to be a lot of overlap, but if you're doing raiding, there's enough of a difference that people will just avoid a job because they're just not comfortable doing that on high-end content, and that's fair. What's this take? The next expansion will attempt to provide exactly what the game has been providing so far, with minimal changes to keep everything up to date. If you've been following news about Square Enix, you will have noticed the company isn't doing so well. The last thing they need is FF14 to experiment and lean too far out the window and lose its player base. The next expansion is going to be more of the same. Alright, this is probably this is a very practical take, and I can't fully disagree with it. But I also don't want to say that they're going to keep things the same just because they want the game to keep, to keep its player base. I think there's a knowing what Yoshipi has done with the game, what that team has done with the game, I can honestly say that it's a matter of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And people are getting tired of it. People might be getting like wary of gosh, I can't even say the word. Homogenization, but it hasn't broken the game. What they're going to end up doing is they're going to do small changes, very incremental changes. As I've noticed with Square Enix, they are more likely to make small class and job, or small job changes and small role changes, and see how it goes for an entire patch, rather than do a complete overhaul, short of something they announced it for. Like, reworks are going to be complete overhauls, for example, but they're not going to change completely how a job plays, or how a role is gonna play, without like some heads up or some experimentation beforehand. So I think this is more of, I think they have a really good formula for how to do a battle system and how to do a job system that lets you explore those jobs over different, with the same character and over different kind of levels. But I can also understand that no one wants to see their game being used as a cash grab, and that we end up losing resources and not having some cool added stuff to FF14 just because the company says we need to use this money to fund another failed game. Because over the time I've been playing, they've released both Balan Wonderland and Forspoken, and both of those bombed. And I'm just thinking, that is a lot of money they've just thrown down the drain. And guess what? That's probably FF14 money that they could have funneled back into this game and added something more for, I would say, general players to enjoy, like more events. They could have maybe used that funding, perhaps, to get a bigger staff so that we could have had an exploratory area for this expansion. Exploratory areas are like Bosnia and Eureka. They're just massive, pretty much more open world areas, but they're tiny instance where you get to do stuff with other players at like high end. It's pretty much the closest we get to the living feel of an MMO in the game, outside of being out in like the general world and doing stuff like, I guess, gathering or doing fates. That's the benefit here. But yeah, it's honestly a shame that we're not getting more investment from the profits of FF14 into FF14. Because for a game this popular at this point and this successful, to have kind of these weird periods of players not feeling like they're getting a lot of content, it feels bad. Although I don't mind it because I like being able to leave the game and, leave the game and just play other games, do other things. I guess that's the benefit to not being tied down to FF14 through thread mill content, as they would call it. Financials are mixed. The other take is, I think they will address it by homogenizing things even more. This is the answer. This is actually still possible. This is completely possible. Homogenization makes it easier for people to get into the game and to try out different jobs. Too much is pretty bad. The level we have at right now is probably the most we can go without it starting to drive people away, that jobs just feel the same. But like even the post addressed up there is that there are certain jobs that feel different enough from within the role that's fine. Tanks are homogenized up until the point you start optimizing. Healers are in the same boat where they have the same damage rotation, but the way they heal can differ. So that's always a good thing.